So I got another beautiful house. Let's check this out. I'm gonna share with you why you actually should not buy one of these houses, because it's not a good investment. Also, why this house really doesn't belong to you. Now, before I go into the topic, first of all, please look at the house and write your comments down below what you think about the house, the design. There's many positive aspects with this house. It's a beautiful house. It doesn't matter if it's not your house at the end of the day, even if you buy it and your name is on the title, that don't matter. Any person that buys a house, they get a title. That don't mean that you own this house. Now, back in medieval England, back in the medieval times, every house was being taxed based on the ground tax. It was called ground tax. There was no property tax. Now, little by little, they ended up coming up with what we have today, property tax. They used to have window tax, they used to have head tax. They came up with all kinds of ways to tax houses. But there was one thing they didn't do, is they never taxed a house based on valuation. They never taxed it the way houses are taxed today. There was only one country a few hundred years ago, that was Holland, that was doing taxation based on home valuation, which was a very violent way of taxing people. Now, most of the houses were being taxed based on their possible or current rental income. So if a house was rented, it would be taxed based on that rental income. If a house was not rented, then it would be taxed based on, if it was rented, then it would be based on that amount. Now, the way property taxes are designed is it's based on valuation, which means you're paying 3% of your home value, which goes up every year. That means every year you have a perpetual tax on your property that you think is yours. Now, when you pay on something such a vast amount of property tax, it's actually not a property tax. The real name for it is rent. So you're paying rent because in reality, you don't own the ground that this house sits on. You just possibly have a title to the surface of the house. This ground is owned by the government or the Crown Corporation, or what it used to be, the monarchy, the king or the queen. And it's still that way in most of the Commonwealth countries. The ground that this house sits on is owned by the Crown Corporation, the city. It's a private arm of the Crown Corporation which owns this ground. Now, they give you permission to build a house here, then you pay a rental fee for building a house here. But this house, they don't mean this house belongs to it. This is just a temporary title you get to live here. So let's just be clear about that. Now, I have more videos on this. You can check that out. And if anybody is interested more, I can talk about this more. Please write down in comments. That helps. The other topic that I'm going to go into, which is probably more important because we can't do much about the fact that we really don't own these houses, and the Crown Corporations or the monarchy still owns the land, and we're just temporary vassals. We're just temple serfs that just that we get a right granted to us to build a house and just pay rent to live here, and they give us a title for that. Now, that don't mean this is a good investment. Why is a house that's costing you $800,000, which is the average cost of a house like this, why this house is not a good investment? Well, let me tell you why. If you're paying 5%, 4% interest rates, which you will pay on average on a typical house such as this, over time you end up paying approximately 150 to 160% of your initial cost that you borrowed to buy this house. Now it is a beautiful house, nice house, nice little room, nice little closet here. Very nice, right? Yes. You will end up paying for 25 years 160% on the initial amount that you will borrow. You will pay almost 1.5 times the mortgage that you will borrow for this house. That's if you end up actually living that long and paying for it. Another thing that you have to take into account, you will have that property tax that I was just talking about also every year, which is going to go up based on the value that the home valuation or the value or the price of this house that it will possibly appreciate. They will increase it. Now it doesn't matter if in the market this house appreciates. The Crown Corporation or the city which owns the land, basically they own your house, they're still going to increase the tax on this house. It don't matter if the market is suffering and the valuation is actually going down. They will still assume the value is the same or going up. So you will still end up paying that same amount of property tax. Now on a typical house like this in Saskatoon, where we are right now, you pay about $5,000 every year, which is again going up every year because they assume the value of your property or their property keeps on going up. This is another cost on your on this house, plus the mortgage that you will be paying. So let's go calculate this now. You have mortgage plus the property tax that you will pay. Now this is eating away on your valuation, and if you take all these in account, all these numbers together, we come up to a fact that in order for this house to be a good investment, this house needs to appreciate at least 170% over 25 years. Now that means this house has to almost double in price, almost. So if you pay, or not quite, it should, the initial mortgage, if you pay $800,000, then it should be roughly, by the time you end up in 25 years, you want to sell this house, it should be worth approximately $1.4 million. So this house has to be worth $1.4 million in 25 years, otherwise you're at a loss. You will end up selling it for less than what you will end up putting into it as far as property taxes go and your mortgage goes. Now, there's one thing that I didn't count here, one major thing that we didn't take into account. It's all the fixing that you will end up doing over years while you live here. Obviously, this window will need changing. This window has only X amounts of years. I mean, these things break. This breaks. This weatherproofing doesn't last 25 years. You will end up fixing it or changing it. Flooring will end up needing changing. Things come up to be changed. These doors might need repainting. There might be a leak up there. You will have to do your shingles every 10 years or more. All the maintenance cost that goes into the house is additional cost on a house such as this. If you take all these costs and plus them all together, take into account all the costs that are associated with a house like this, it's not an investment. It's actually a liability, meaning this is something that you always pay, it never pays you back. That's why back in medieval times, back in the day, houses were not taxed like the way they're taxed today, because people understood that a house doesn't produce anything. So you cannot tax it like a person that works and produces something, then you tax them because they produce, they have an income. A house in itself has no income. It's the person that lives in here that has income. Now that person is already taxed through federal income tax and other types of consumption taxes. We already pay those taxes, but we still are now being taxed on this house, which is not a productive component. It's not a productive capital. Unless you end up renting this basement, then it becomes a productive capital. But the problem with renting this basement, we know now in Canada, the landlord boards are favoring the tenants. So it's so hard to deal with tenants these days in Canada. Some of them even move into people's houses and they don't move out and they don't pay rent. So these people, these landlords basically get stuck having somebody living in their house for free for years in Ontario or Vancouver. Right now there are cases that people live in other people's houses for years without paying rent. They end up owing them $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, and they still can't kick them out because that's how lousy laws are now that we're dealing with in Canada. The reason that's happening because every single issue that's happening between the tenant and the landlord, they say, well, you have to go to the rentals man. You have to go for everything to rentals man. Even something such as simple, such as the tenant is not paying rent, then you have to still go wait for months. Such a simple issue that can be resolved in 5 minutes, literally, guys. 5 minutes, you can go present your case. Okay, all you have to do is say, prove it that you have paid your rent. Okay, you haven't paid your rent. You need to leave the house today. That's how simple most of the cases are. But because of bureaucracy, in my other videos I've talked about this, because of bureaucracy, because of government overreach into people's lives, we have a situation where the system is hampering the market. The system is hampering people's lives. The system is so far into people's houses and businesses that things are actually harder and harder to manage. And you end up paying more because of government overreach into your business and private matters that they should never be in that. The bureaucracy should never have that much overreach into a simple thing such as a tenant not paying rent, well, hence they need to move out. It's simple as that. You shouldn't have to wait for months. Please let me know in comments what you think about this house. Do you like the design or not? And I already gave you my 2 reasons why I wouldn't buy a new house for now. I would rather go buy a older used house. It would be a better investment and actually be an investment compared to a newer house where you don't know in 25 years if this is really gonna appreciate that much in value and how much you're gonna spend to actually keep up this house. And again, property taxes are going up, guys, every year. It's a perpetual rise. It's never going to stop if we have this system. It will never stop. It will continually go up. You will continually pay more rent for owning this house. Property tax, the way it is right now, it's rent. It's a fee. You're being punished for owning this house, and it's criminal to have this type of property tax. It's very, very violent property tax. So please write in the comments what you think about the design of this kitchen, of the house. It's a beautiful house nonetheless. It doesn't matter the price. If it was priced, not the price, if things were not so overreached by the government, this would be a beautiful investment actually. The only reason this is not an investment is because of government bureaucracy that we have that hampers free market. If we had less of government bureaucracy, less rules, less regulations and red tape, this would be a great investment actually. So please write in the comments what you think about my 2 points of why this is not a good investment, what you think about the design, and what you think about uh, the bureaucracy that's hampering free market.